All right, everyone, welcome into tonight's live stream of Wave News Extra. Here we are live at 8:05, and as we always like to do, start off with a quick glimpse and a glance through our SkyTrack network of cameras and enjoying just as a featured favorite, it seems lately, thanks to the storm tracking team, just looking on conditions out there in Bardstown, where you can see a little bit of the wind blowing there, some breeze, but overall pretty quiet and in the mid to upper 50 for us, up to 50s for us. So we've been talking about the 50s and now just anticipating of when things are going to get much colder with a lot more precipitation. And with that, we welcome you here inside the Wave Now studio. I'm Jose Sosaya. As always, glad you're here to join us, whether that's on the Wave Now app, through your smart TV devices, or whether you're connecting with us the myriad of ways that we are on social media. We always like to remind you we are there to connect on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and X for the live streams, adding our footprints and other sorts of social media platforms, including trying to build up on Instagram and TikTok, just so you know. That's something we're working on actively to try to make sure we meet you all where you are, just as you're going about your daily lives. But always appreciate this opportunity to break down the big stories of the day in case, you know, your day at work got very busy and you're able to, you know, sit down and connect with us on your smartphone or your tablet device. Needless to say, the images we want to start with tonight are of a pretty dreary scene. You're talking the ashes of what were probably burned vehicles, destroyed buildings, but this is still the ongoing investigation of the deadly UPS plane crash. So without holding you back from some of those images, and you could hear the machinery out there still, our cameras got a pretty up-close look at all that has been left behind and is still there to see weeks after the crash. This is access to the site along Grade Lane to mark the path that the MD-11 plane took as it was crashing. We know 15 people were killed and lost their lives. The access to this part of town has been pretty limited as the investigation into what ultimately caused the crash is still continuing. But with that, the context is also important to remember. For 10 long weeks, you know, and arduous weeks for so many who were impacted, of course, the families and friends of the victims, and businesses near the plane crash site, they tell us on one hand, they're getting ready to come back to what feels like some sense of normalcy. That's hard to do as you're still recovering from all this. But starting tomorrow, they are going to have around-the-clock access to their buildings again after all this time being restricted. It's been today was a pretty extremely busy day for businesses on Melton and Knopp Avenues, if you're familiar where that part of town is. So again, tomorrow, the first day they'll get to go back without any sort of time constrictions. People at Century Steel, Renton's Maintenance, Best Steel Dumpster, all are telling us at Wave News today they spent most of the day getting ready to move back in. Another frequent source and just someone we've been checking in a lot for business impact, at least, is with Quantum Inc. The folks there, they're on Melton Avenue. They had to set up shop temporarily in Bullitt County and in southern Indiana to try to stay afloat as far as their business is concerned after the crash. Their chief executive telling us that they've lost more than $1 million in disrupted business because of the crash. He's just hopeful now the company can push forward, coming back to their home base.
We've been through a lot of crazy stuff in the 28 years we've been in business. This probably takes the prize for being the craziest thing. But, you know, we've been through a lot, and we always pop out the other side confident that's what's going to happen.
And the company telling us that they think this 24-hour access is going to allow them to go back to having people working their rotating shifts throughout the day. That 24-hour access, though, is only going to be limited. That is restricted in and of itself to employees and business owners. And Metro leaders say they're still working on a plan to allow customers and deliveries into this part of town safely from the outer loop. Coming back here into the studio as I prepare the next thing in this team coverage we've been spending time on really all throughout the day. What were the most stunning images was what you saw first initially at the beginning of the live stream is just the wreckage, the refuse that is still out there. To that point, Wave News reporter David Mattingly was the one we sent with our photographers as well to look at the spots that suffered the most damage that afternoon. Not just the loss of property, where the loss of life happened. And so we just want to show a little bit of what David was able to capture this afternoon.
Two large wreaths sit in a gravel lot on the property of Grade A Auto Parts. They display the names of the people who died here in the fiery crash of a UPS jet.
We did locate victims on both sides of the road. And then, we found 10 on this side of the road to your back, and then we found 3 on this side. And then there were 2, obviously, that unfortunately passed away at the hospital.
Just real quick, the next spot that we're going to go through is this lot right here.
Metro Emergency Management Executive Director Jody Myman is our guide for our first look at what remains of the mile-long path of destruction left from that night 10 weeks ago. Even people who have been here multiple times say it is a lot to take in.
There's a sadness, but humbling. I feel sorry for the families that lost their loved ones. But there is some sadness out here, but also there was a lot of teamwork and effort to help get normal life as normal as it can be for us back.
Driving down Grade Lane, it's hard to believe that 4 feet of oil once covered this part of the roadway, some of it on fire. Today, plastic sheets and barriers line the roads as part of the environmental remediation. All along this short journey, we are constantly reminded of how much work there still is to do. Even here, we have crews collecting debris and removing contamination. Pieces of the aircraft have been removed, but stacks of scorched and rusted metal remain. The sounds of heavy machinery is constant, with no end in sight to a complete recovery. When will the work be done?
We don't know, and that's a standard thing that I know I've said, but we just don't know. We want to make sure it's done right. We don't want to rush anything. We want to make sure that everything's done correctly.
And so our thanks to David and our photographers for spending the day out there. Just for reference, it's been all that time since early November that, no TV reporting crew, no media crew have been allowed in there just until today. Officials laying out a litany of safety reasons to try and make the space in and of itself as, quote, safe as possible. And so just the fact that, Wave News and other reporting teams were out there for this firsthand look could be viewed as a sign of progress. But as you heard Jody Myman explain there's still a lot more work and trying to search for answers as much as possible. In more news tonight, just some updates on some investigations and things happening around town of note that we've been checking in on. There's a story of a woman. It was, pretty startling to hear. This was a deadly New Year's Eve shooting outside of a McDonald's restaurant in the Metro. Well, the person police were looking after is now in custody at Metro Corrections. LMPD telling us that they arrested Shoshana Jones just today, and she is going to be charged with murder, robbery, and being a felon with a gun. There's an arrest report claiming Jones was upset that a child dinged her car door in the parking lot outside of this McDonald's. Police say that she started arguing with the child's mother before pulling out a gun and shooting that woman. Mayra Rodriguez Munoz, the woman, well, she died, and police found Jones's ID on the ground next to one of the shell casings. She's expected to be arraigned tomorrow. In more updates, Jefferson County judge has dismissed the murder charge against Nathan Short, ruling he is immune from prosecution. Short was charged with murder after shooting Nicholas Wedding back in May of 24. Short's lawyer argued he was defending a woman Wedding was living with and was justified in shooting him. Short's defense lawyer says the woman came home, found Wedding in their bed with someone else. A fight broke out. The woman ran to her bedroom to lock herself in after Nicholas Wedding threatened her. Wedding is accused of following her up the stairs and shooting Short. The judge ruled that Short was defending the woman from harm, which is allowed by law. And staying in Jefferson County, former Youth Corrections Director Tony Rice taking a plea deal in relation to a case that involved a crash with her government-issued car. And you see images of what the wreck was there. This was back in the summer of 24. Rice's city-issued vehicle was found crashed underneath this Louisville overpass. It was around the northbound lanes of I-71 at US 42. Rice told police, though, it had been stolen. But then, September later that year, so months after, Rice was charged with 8 criminal counts, including criminal mischief, falsely reporting an incident, fabricating evidence, and intimidating 2 witnesses who were then summoned to testify about what happened. Investigators say the evidence pointed to Rice wrecking the car and then trying to cover it up. Well, today in court, she pleaded guilty to 5 of the 8 charges. The other 3 went through what's called an Alford plea, which means that someone maintains their innocence but takes the plea deal because they acknowledge there was enough evidence to convict them. Rice is set to be formally sentenced on March 5th. All right, Looking at the clock now, we're going to do a little bit of reset to go over more stories to share with you. A lot, that is happening right here in our own backyard across the Louisville Metro. Some things with some implications for what is going to be decided in Frankfurt with the General Assembly going on, but then just what's on the plate that potentially could be some new laws that will apply to folks in Kentucky. And for bus riders, potential TARC changes, what the math for the dollar amount is going to look like there. A lot more to break down for you tonight. So hope you stay with us. We'll be right back with much more Wave News Extra after this break. All right, everyone. Thanks for sticking around with us. Or if you're just joining us, here we are in the Wave Now studio, breakdown of some of the day's bigger stories and, more things of interest to you all as you're, sort of settling in for the night, and some stories that we're following of interest to you as we're kind of still working late into the night to follow some of these stories. So we're going to kind of go a bunch of different routes on this, but still all kind of within the footprint of what's going on in our own backyard. Part of that, we talk about lately a lot of the business for state leaders and lawmakers in Frankfurt. There's still some policy that at the local level, Metro leaders are also putting emphasis on, keeping their eyes on the balls there. Within Metro Council, Republicans leadership in there outlining their progress on their own policy goals set within what's called the Safer Louisville Plan. Now, the plan was just announced last September, including 18 proposals to address a lot of safety concerns across Jefferson County. Today, they say of these initiatives, six of the 18 have been marked as completed. Today, our news team talked to Minority Caucus Chair Anthony Piaggettini about one of those issues that was checked off the list of six.
We passed a comprehensive anti-human trafficking ordinance that is going a long way to stop the scourge of human trafficking here in Jefferson County. That ordinance was a huge effort, well over a year in the making.
And they say two new initiatives have been added to the proposal, which include unlicensed charitable donations and retail theft to coordinate some help and partnership with the Attorney General's office. So again, as a policy plan, something Metro Council will certainly, keep taking up for these measures, and we'll keep tabs on it and keep you all abreast of what is going on. Speaking of some changes coming down the pike, so to say, these images, you've heard us kind of wonder what would be the future of Mid-City Mall, but we are learning new details that just broke today that an Atlanta-based development firm plans to work alongside the family who owns the Highlands property. So the group that's coming in, They're called Branch Properties of Atlanta. We learned they specialize in development, and they actually operate multiple Publix stores around the U.S. You're probably very familiar with Publix as a grocery brand. The firm's website says that they're set to develop this property alongside the mall's current owners as a joint venture. Remember, this all hinges on what would have been the next chapter of Mid-City Mall once they put it up for sale back in November of 24. And right now it is currently home to a value market, a library branch, and several other small businesses. So beyond what this branch property group is going to do, that remains to be seen. And we will let you know when and how things are changing on that front. Okay, so this is, again, we're kind of going to dip into a lot of state business that's happening at the Capitol, but for drivers, this would impact you if you're ever in an accident or just stall out and would need some help from pickup crew or tow trucks. Lawmakers in Frankfurt are again trying to get past a bill that is being called Troy's Law. It would allow tow truck drivers to use blue lights when they arrive at the scene of a wreck. And one big proponent who's been pretty public facing, talking to a lot of media, is a tow truck driver and owner of a business himself, Bubba Johnson. He runs Bubba's Towing and Recovery in Carter County. And he's been pushing for this for more than a year. He says getting killed on the side of a road is a daily possibility, the dangers for the line of work they do. And the mission passion for Johnson in this case was his friend and tow truck driver Troy Caldwell, who was hit and killed working on the side of the interstate back in 2024. So Johnson says he and his team of supporters and partners are trying to do what they can to prevent another kind of tragedy like this.
Well, what would you want people to do if it was you or your loved one? You would want them to slow down and move over. We have to make changes in our industry that helps us and our people out here working to ensure their safety.
So if Troy's Law passes, blue lights would be allowed only when the wrecker, so the tow truck driver, they're stopped and then loading vehicle or any debris they got to clean up from the roadway. What the next step is for the stage and ultimately for a final vote for the state assembly to consider, we'll certainly keep you updated on that. Coming back a little closer to the metro, Dare to Care Food Bank did get a major boost in funding their mission to feed the hungry across the city, thanks to the Louisville alumni chapter of Delta Sigma Theta sorority. They presented the big ceremonial paper check to the nonprofit this afternoon. But in essence, this started as a $13,000 campaign. It even was a fundraising event that was Harlem Nights in Derby City, a red carpet affair. That was back in late November. The sororities campaign also had a QR code leading donors straight to go to the Dare to Care donation page. And all said and done, leading up to the day, Delta Sigma Theta says the campaign that they wanted to kickstart grew to over $23,000 of financial and food assistance support.
And we believe that food, as well as shelter, as well as clothing, but that food is a right and not a privilege. So we wanted to support an organization such as Dare to Care to be able to make sure that people have the very basic and minimum things that they need, one being food.
And the sorority says they're still very much about letting people know where they can find out information if they wanted to donate needed items of food, money, whatever was in demand. There's the website that's daretocare.org, and that they want to keep this partnership going as long as they're able to make that difference in Dare to Care's mission. So in other updates for Metro bus riders, TARC, we've talked here on Wave News, whether that was on the regular newscast or maybe we brought it up here for you all joining us on the stream. But as of tonight, we know TARC leadership, they're considering raising fares to try to stabilize the agency's own finances. But right now, the timing is the TARC is preparing to cut roughly 12% of routes this summer because of the existing funding shortfalls. Earlier today, Mayor Craig Greenberg said he's going to continue to push for more state funding to cover TARC's, the responsibilities, the duties of TARC with the routes and the services they provide. Greenberg calling the public bus service as crucial to those who rely on it.
When I became mayor, TARC was financially insolvent. It was ready to go under. It was out of money. It was using one-time American Rescue Plan funding money to fill 25% of its operating budget. That was not sustainable. And so thanks to the leadership of Ozzy and the board and others on the team and new folks that he's brought in, TARC is now headed in a really positive direction. It might not happen this session, but we'll continue to work on it year after year, because I do believe that public transportation is incredibly important.
Now, worth noting that the fare changes to TARC rides are not set in stone yet, but we did want to break down this in some graphics so you can see what the current price is and what TARC is recommending the increase be. So right now you can see there on your screen, a single ride costs $1.75. That price hasn't changed since 2012. Now, riders can also, you can see in the fare type, you can buy a daily pass, you could buy the weekly pass, you could buy a month pass. The proposal would bring the cost of the single ride from $1.75 to $2.25, and you see where the other options increase as well. And we can break that down around the ballpark figure. You can see, though, the bigger increases come for the longer-term fare types. So $10 more for a 7-day pass, $25 more for the month pass. Now, if this is all approved, the new fares would actually start this March. But that is to be determined. And worth noting, there are several meetings starting next week to get the public's input, how they feel one way or the other about these considered price increases. So you can see the first is happening next Tuesday. Next Tuesday will be January 20th at Shively City Hall. That meeting starts at 5. There will be those following meetings at United Crescent Hill Ministries, and then an online one that would be the Thursday, January the 22nd. And riders can also share and let their feedback be known online. There's details on how to do all that if you just check our coverage on our website, wave3.com. And in the realm of transportation, although this has to do with sort of more the flow of traffic, and you're going to follow me on this, is the recent perhaps observation by a lot of folks in their smaller streets in their neighborhoods that semi-trucks have been clogging a lot of that freer flowing traffic. It's an issue that a lot of neighborhoods say has actually been growing for decades, as Louisville is in these pockets where there's been a lot of industrial activity. Wave News reporter Logan Perrone was checking in on the story for you tonight, saying officials, A, are trying to get folks' comments and input, and then B, hoping they can find a solution to try to clear these paths and keep everybody moving as freely as they need to.
It's a tale not quite as old as the neighborhood, though it has a history in historical Louisville.
This has been going on for many decades, and even before my time, many people have been coming at this problem from a myriad of angles. It really is a complex issue.
Whitney Bennett helped organize the Old Louisville Mobility Coalition after moving back years ago. Neighborhoods like hers all over the county have dealt with a number of issues with large commercial vehicles, congestion, noise pollution, and most pressing, safety concerns.
And you have these large vehicles oftentimes going at heavy speeds, going over the center yellow line, not designed to be on these roadways. You risk accident, injury because of that low visibility of those vehicles. So it really is a complex issue.
So this is still all today.
Wave News, like many other people in the community, have documented the issues in recent years, and local leaders want to get the wheels turning towards solutions.
There's a lot of community desire to see some change for what's happening from current status quo.
Mike King is with Louisville's Department of Transportation, which is in the process of developing a freight mobility action plan. Past plans dealt with regional traffic, and other mitigation efforts didn't deliver the results people were looking for. King believes looking at the problems at a county level will get things moving in the right direction.
I think let's look at the needs that we have and recognizing the shortfalls and the challenges that we have and say, all right, this is what we would like to see happening going forward, and how are the opportunities and the mechanisms we can pull to make that happen.
A finalized plan is scheduled to be done early this summer. Bennett says she has new hope that neighborhoods across Louisville see new, positive change and less heavy traffic soon.
So I hope that having the data, having a structured process to create this freight mobility plan will, as has been promised, actually position us to take action and do something about the problem.
And our thanks to Logan Perone for that report. If you were interested in letting the transportation team know what your thoughts would be, otherwise general worries or concerns or observations that could help inform this plan, there's still a chance to have your say in what goes into that finalized vision. There is one more in-person session that's happening tomorrow night. It goes from 6 to 8 at the Americana World Community Center. And there's also a link to a public survey that Logan has in his story up on wave3.com right now that is going to stay open through the end of the month. 8:30 tonight, we're going to reset for our last batch of stories and breakdowns to share with you. This is going to be covering a little bit more of some stories around Kentucky across the Commonwealth, and then we'll bring things back closer to home. So I hope you stay with us, folks, here on Wave News Extra, the live stream. We'll be right back after this. Welcome back in, everyone, to the Wave Now studio, and very glad you're spending this part of your Tuesday night with us. So the next two stories I'm going to share with you come from our reporting partners around the Commonwealth, and they do have to center, again, on a lot of business going before the state representatives and senators in Frankfurt, because again, you know, it's the filing of all their ideas and proposals for policy, and sort of now just getting a sense of which ones might, you know, have some support, which might be noticeable or notable. In one of these first ones that we're going to break down is some lawmakers say they want to increase the safety rules, the protections that would exist inside Kentucky schools. And they're looking at this through a Senate bill numbered 101 with a simple lesson, they say, for Kentucky students, that if you assault a teacher, if you hit a teacher, you're going to face adult consequences. That is how the supporters are describing it. Madison Porter explains what the proposed changes would entail.
Senator Matt Nunn calls Senate Bill 101 common sense.
We selected that number because it's a common sense approach to making sure classrooms are safe for everyone.
But the bill's consequences are serious. It targets students who assault teachers, administrators, staff, and bus drivers.
If we want to recruit and retain the best and brightest teachers, to do that, they better feel safe at work.
The bill requires mandatory reporting of assaults. Schools that don't comply face criminal charges. It also mandates a 12-month minimum expulsion for students who physically injure staff. And it lowers the age for students to be charged as adults for third-degree assault from 16 to 14.
This is an issue that we hear a lot from our members.
The Kentucky Education Association supports the bill. The KEA found 25,000 incidents of students assaulting staff since 2021.
That's a staggering number.
Vice President Jessica Heiler says mandatory reporting is one of the most important changes. She says schools don't always report assaults. They fear looking bad.
With who has to report in the timeline, that everything gets reported so that we have real data so that we're making good decisions.
However, she sees areas for improvement. For example, she believes a 12-month expulsion is steep.
We want our kids to be in school. That's really important to us, and we do not want them to miss instruction. However, there do need to be consequences for assault on staff, so we need to find a happy medium there.
In Frankfort, Madison Porter, WKYT.
And Senate Bill 101 does build off of similar legislation that was passed not too long ago in 2024 that would protect healthcare workers in Kentucky from similar assault in that context, having to do with patients in their work environment. All right, folks, a reminder that you can always check in with us on the live stream. In this case, not sure if we've had our first Twitch contribution for a while since we've been open up here in the Wave Now studio. So shout out to our Twitch users here. And again, one of these other social media platforms, we want to make sure we're available to connect with you as we're, letting you know what we're reporting on and what we're working through the day. So we talked about the business for teacher and school staff protections, something that state lawmakers are going to consider. And the context for this next consideration for leaders is what the Kentucky Jewish Council says it's been collecting and sharing information recently on incidents of anti-Semitism within the state. Well, council leaders on a local level, state leaders met today to share more about some of these incidents and what took place to describe what they're trying to prevent. This is reporter Alyssa Williams to talk about a little bit more about the report and what at least the policymakers want to do to curb this kind of behavior, these kinds of attacks and targeting the Jewish community across Kentucky.
Rabbi Shlomo Litvin of Lexington says nearly 50 serious acts of anti-Semitism have taken place across Kentucky in 2025. Those numbers come from the Kentucky Jewish Council's annual anti-Semitism report.
Litvin serves as the council's chairperson. He says the council follows the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance's definition of anti-Semitism, which includes making stereotypical allegations against Jewish people, minimizing the scale of the Holocaust, and comparing Israeli policy to that of the Nazis. Litvin says there were less acts of anti-Semitism in Kentucky last year than there were in 2024, but that's not the case worldwide. He mentioned a wide variety of acts in the report, from rallies held on college campuses featuring anti-Semitic signage to anti-Semitic cartoons and op-eds. Litvin adds the council's main concerns for 2026 are curbing anti-Semitic situations in education, calling on local print media outlets to not elevate hate speech, and addressing radical political viewpoints in our communities.
So many of the evil ideologies that America fights against on a daily basis, it is not limited to right or left. It is not limited to a religious group or a socioeconomic standing. Immorality is found everywhere, and as such, anti-Semitism is found everywhere.
Louisville-based Jewish activist Hani Goldman says the definition of anti-Semitism the council follows is a working definition that may exaggerate what counts as anti-Semitism, so she doesn't believe there were as many incidents as reported.
I am a First Amendment purist. Once you start saying you cannot say that, you're going down a very dangerous road.
Litvin touched on how these ideas are spreading through younger groups here in the Commonwealth. So he encourages parents to check in with their kids and learn what kind of media they're consuming to ensure that these ideas are not being introduced or spread within their households. In Frankfort, Alyssa Williams, WKYT.
All right, coming back here into the studio. Not so much a jarring turn here to talk about other stories. This is more so coming back to what's happening in the metro. And this is for some job hiring because the Louisville Zoo is wanting to add some new faces to their respective team. They're hosting their yearly job fair not too far from today. So it's Saturday, the 24th, January 24th from 10 to 2. They're looking for seasonal and full-time position candidates. They're available in admissions, the animal departments, their front desk, membership, the splash park, a lot of other different departments. The zoo saying that future, potential employees do get perks that include free zoo admission, free parking, discounts to the gift shops, and food concessions. That is something you can learn more about, the requirements for any of these specific jobs. We do have a story up on our website. Elsewhere around town, 38 new trees planted in downtown Louisville today to help improve shading after now basically wrapping up a long-term project. This is some new greenery planted at Clay and Chestnut Streets in the Lumed district. This effort, the organizing team basically wants to help replenish the trees that were stripped during construction. Trees Louisville telling us that research shows patients with a view of green space recover faster. They will take less pain medication and leave hospitals sooner than anyone who's dealing with a more cityscape view. Hospital workers and patient families could also find some stress reduction by then walking in the trees that are planted in the area, they say.
Apart from the health benefits, the main reason we planted these trees was for the shade of the parking lot to mitigate that kind of urban heat island effect.
Now, the Lumed area currently has less than 10% tree canopy coverage, well below what Tree Louisville's goal is of at least 30% canopy coverage in every neighborhood within the metro area that they serve. All right, well, our last story tonight, I'm going to say it's still pretty early in the new year, so something surely we could have been discussing the first week of 2026, but financial experts and our Dawn G say this is still a pretty perfect time to establish clear goals and make personal decisions for a prosperous 2026, not with resolutions necessarily, but with small practices that can create some stability with the effort, bit by bit. So Dawn had a chance to talk to one of the major credit bureaus about some moves that can help keep your money straight for the year ahead.
So our forecast shows that we're going to stay pretty much the same.
Michelle Ranieri is Vice President and Head of U.S. Research and Consulting for TransUnion, one of the 3 nationwide providers of consumer reports. Ranieri says this stability is significant because this could be a signal to the end of what has been called the COVID credit cycle.
So it started off with consumers getting stimulus money and really paying down a lot of credit. But then when they used up that money on vacations and buying things that they weren't able to for a while, they used it up and we saw delinquencies really go up.
For a happy new year, Ranieri shares tips for a financial strategy in 2026.
Best things that you can do probably right now, especially with interest rates that have been ticking down over this year, is to get a personal loan, like a consolidation loan to pay off your credit card.
The loan allows you to make a single monthly payment instead of lots of payments to different creditors, while also lowering your overall interest rates. If your credit score is low, that loan may be a little bit more expensive, or you can take a few months to try to build your credit score before you apply for the loan.
The trick, though, is to make sure that you don't run up your credit cards again to the point that they were before so that you don't put yourself in the same place.
Pay attention to your available credit and what percentage of that credit you are using. That is your credit utilization rate. To find your rate, divide your total credit card balances by your total credit card limits.
The higher utilization, it can take points off of your credit score.
As always, Ranieri stresses pay your bills on time. All of your bills, not just your credit cards.
1 day late makes a difference. That's considered not on time. Pay the entire minimum amount.
Pay more if you can. Paying only the minimum on credit cards will keep you in debt longer as the interest will continue to build.
Don't open a whole lot of credit because if you open a lot of credit, it kind of looks like you know something that the credit score doesn't know, like you're about to lose a job or something big is coming up that you need a financial net for.
In this new year, take advantage of decreasing interest rates when you can.
So if they have an auto loan or a mortgage that's a higher interest rate, as those come down, chase it and refinance. If you have to refinance more than once, go ahead and do it.
All right, thanks to Dawn for that report. And again, just to add to some more of the tips to help make 2026 financially prosperous is to build those smaller things, bit by bit, and whether that's creating or updating your budget, building an emergency fund slowly but surely. But in talking about, car breakdowns, illness, job loss, the point is to be ready in case you have to take care of all that business that you didn't want to in the first place, but it's good to have the financial stability there and then pay down any high interest debt because that debt builds fast and it will cost the most. You can always find Dawn's series, Making Ends Meet, and so much more as a reminder. All there at your fingertips on the wave3.com homepage. And this is where we send all of our updates of breaking news, our troubleshooters investigations, our consumer stories that has everything Making Ends Meet does and more, all here for you to refresh and peruse. Thanks to our digital team for making sure that is always updated. And then you at home can always set up those alerts. So when these stories come in, and it could be depending on the kind of news that you're wanting to stay on top of over the course of your day, set that up by downloading the Wave News app and the Wave Weather app, both great tools to have in your pocket. And I would hope that you have some time to join us tonight on Wave News at 11 as we've got some more reporting to share with you. What we're going to discuss, funny, this circles back if you've been staying with us on the live stream, is a lot of business that state representatives and senators are discussing right now in Frankfurt. One of these bills is a House version, but both coming from the same place with the goal that these lawmakers want is to increase Kentucky's minimum wage, which if you do or don't know, it still matches the current federal number at $7.25 an hour. These are Democrats in the state House and the state Senate trying to increase that total wage. They might differ on some numbers in the finer points and what critiques are about what the market should dictate from state Republican leaders. But we're going to break down into what the finer points are of the House version of this bill tonight. Meteorologist Ryan Hoke joining us as we're going to break down the changes in our week ahead, talking about colder temperatures and the precipitation that we're not going to be able to ignore and just need to prepare as we're driving where we need to go. All right, folks, that's going to do it for us tonight. I'm Jose Susaya in the Wave Now studio with tonight's Wave News Extra. In this case, we will see you back here tomorrow night. Until then, take care.